I used to think spiders were simple, just another bug that makes webs. But the more I learned, the more I realized spiders shouldn't be possible. Their bodies violate basic engineering principles. Their behavior suggests intelligence that shouldn't exist in a brain smaller than a grain of rice. Their evolutionary history makes no logical sense. And yet, here they are, thriving beyond almost any other animal group. This isn't about spiders being normal. This is about how evolution broke its own rules and accidentally created something extraordinary. Let's start with the most obvious problem. Spider bodies make no physical sense. When I first learned how spiders move, I thought someone was lying to me. Because spiders don't have muscles in their legs. Not the way you and I do. You want to extend your arm, you contract your triceps. The muscle straightens your elbow. Basic biomechanics. Every animal with legs works this way, except spiders. Spiders move their legs using blood pressure, literally. They have a hydraulic system where they pump hemolymph, their version of blood, into their legs to make them straighten. When they want to bend a leg, muscles contract. When they want to extend it, they increase internal pressure and the leg shoots out. This is construction crane technology, hydraulics, pistons. Except it's biological, it's miniaturized to the scale of a paperclip. And somehow it works perfectly for creatures that need to move with precision, speed, and control. But here's the problem with hydraulic systems. They fail catastrophically when punctured. Engineers know this. That's why hydraulic equipment has redundancies, backups, safety valves. Spiders have none of that. One puncture, one crack in their exoskeleton, and the entire system depressurizes. They lose the ability to extend their legs. This is why dying spiders curl into balls. It's not a choice, it's hydraulic failure. So evolution built an animal that moves using one of the most vulnerable mechanical systems possible. An animal with no backup, no redundancy, no safety mechanism. And somehow, this worked. Spiders became one of the most successful predator groups on Earth using a movement system that should have been an evolutionary dead end. If you're already questioning everything you thought you knew about how bodies work, hit subscribe, because we're about to go way deeper into why spiders are basically biological impossibilities that somehow succeeded anyway. Now, let's talk about silk. Because silk is where spider biology goes from improbable to genuinely impossible. Spider silk, pound for pound, is stronger than steel. Some varieties are tougher than Kevlar. It can stretch 40% beyond its resting length without breaking. And spiders produce this material inside their bodies at room temperature using only proteins and water. Think about what that means. Humans need blast furnaces at thousands of degrees to make steel. We need complex chemical processes under high pressure to manufacture Kevlar. Spiders do better than both, using nothing but the amino acids they get from eating flies. But here's what genuinely shocked me when I started researching this. Silk isn't one material, it's seven. 7 completely different materials with completely different properties, all produced by the same animal. Dragline silk for structural support, capture silk with sticky coating, wrapping silk for prey, tubular silk for burrows, aciniform silk for cocoons, attachment cement to glue webs to surfaces, each one synthesized in a different gland, each one with distinct molecular structure, each one produced on demand. Imagine if your body could produce steel, rubber, glue, Kevlar, and cotton, switching between them instantly depending on what you needed. That's what spiders do, every single day. And they do it so efficiently that they recycle it. Orb weavers, the classic circular web builders, consume their entire web every morning. They eat it, digest the proteins, and rebuild from scratch each night. They reclaim about 90% of the material. It's molecular recycling that we can't replicate in any industrial process. But the most impossible thing about silk isn't the material properties. It's the fact that spiders evolved this capability over 380 million years ago and have been producing it continuously ever since. For context, humans have been making steel for about 4,000 years. We've been synthesizing polymers for maybe 150 years. Spiders have been manufacturing advanced materials for 380 million years, and we still can't fully replicate what they do. Okay, so spiders have impossible hydraulics and impossible materials. But their sensory systems are where things get truly bizarre. Most spiders have 8 eyes, but those eyes barely work. Seriously. Most spider species have terrible vision. Blurry, low resolution, may be capable of detecting movement and light levels, but not much else. So, how do they hunt? How do they navigate? How do they avoid predators? The answer is something I never expected. They use hair, thousands and thousands of hairs covering their entire body. But these aren't normal hairs, they're mechanoreceptors, microscopic sensory organs that detect vibrations, air currents, and chemical signals. Some of these hairs, called trichobothria, are so sensitive they can detect air movements 1/10,000th the width of a human hair. That's not a typo. 1/10,000th. They can sense the wing beats of a flying insect before it touches the web. They can detect the air pressure wave from a striking predator milliseconds before contact. Other hairs detect ground vibrations, allowing spiders to hear approaching prey through solid surfaces. Some respond to specific sound frequencies, essentially giving spiders the ability to hear without ears. They're sensing acoustic waves through mechanical deflection of sensory structures, but here's where it gets really strange. Some spiders hunt using a sensory system we didn't even know existed until recently. They detect electric fields. At the 6,000 character mark, if you're realizing that spiders are sensing the world in ways we literally can't imagine, smash that subscribe button. We're documenting creatures that evolve solutions to problems we didn't know existed. Certain spider hairs respond to atmospheric electricity. They can sense the static charge on flying insects, allowing them to detect prey even in total darkness without touching them. It's electrosensing, a capability we thought only existed in aquatic animals like sharks and platypuses. But spiders do it too, in air, using hair. So here's the paradox. Spiders have 8 eyes that mostly don't work, but they've compensated by evolving a distributed sensory system across their entire body that's more sophisticated than most animals' actual sense organs. They don't see the world, they feel it. Every vibration, every air current, every electric field. The entire world is a tactile experience processed through thousands of hairs. And this shouldn't work. Distributed sensing like this creates enormous computational problems. How do you integrate information from thousands of independent sensors? How do you process all that data? How do you distinguish signal from noise? Spiders solve this. We still don't fully understand how. Now we get to the part that kept me awake at night. Spider intelligence. Spiders have tiny brains. Microscopic. Some jumping spider brains are literally smaller than the period at the end of this sentence. And yet, they display behaviors that suggest cognitive abilities that shouldn't be possible given their neural constraints. Let me give you a specific example. Portia spiders hunt other spiders. This is incredibly dangerous because their prey lives in webs, knows the terrain, and is often larger. But Portia has developed a strategy. First, reconnaissance. A Portia spider will observe a target web from a distance, sometimes for over an hour, studying the structure and the residents' behavior patterns. This is already weird. Prolonged observation requires attention, memory, and pattern recognition. Then, route planning. The Portia doesn't approach directly. It executes detours, approaching from unexpected angles that minimize detection. Multiple researchers have documented Portia spiders taking paths that require going completely out of sight of the target, navigating around obstacles, and arriving from directions that provide tactical advantage. This is spatial memory, this is planning, this is cognitive mapping of three-dimensional space, in a brain smaller than a grain of rice. But it gets stranger. Portia spiders modify their strategy based on the target species. They've been observed using different vibration patterns, different approach routes, different attack timings depending on whether they're hunting an orb weaver versus a jumping spider versus a sheet web spider. This is species-specific predation strategy. They're identifying prey type and adapting behavior accordingly. One experiment found that Portia spiders could solve novel problems they'd never encountered before. Researchers presented them with prey in situations they couldn't have experienced in nature. The spiders paused, appeared to assess the situation, then tried different approaches until one worked. This looks like reasoning, trial and error guided by some kind of internal model. And we have no idea how a brain that small is doing this. Here's the paradox. Intelligence requires neural processing power. Bigger brains generally mean more cognitive capability. That's why humans, dolphins, elephants, all have large brains relative to body size. But spiders violate this rule completely. They're displaying cognitive sophistication that shouldn't fit in their neural architecture. One hypothesis is that spider cognition is heavily embodied. The body itself does computational work. The web acts as an extended sensory organ. The silk production system responds automatically to chemical signals. The legs have local neural clusters that process information semi-independently. Intelligence isn't centralized in the brain. It's distributed across the entire organism. If that's true, then spiders aren't intelligent the way we're intelligent. They're intelligent in a way we don't have a framework to understand. Their thinking happens partly outside their brain, distributed through webs and silk and legs and sensory hairs. And this terrifies me philosophically, because if spiders can be intelligent without centralized brains, if cognition can be distributed and embodied, then what else qualifies as intelligent? Where's the line? What even is a mind? Okay, so we've established that spiders have impossible bodies, impossible materials, impossible senses, and impossible intelligence. Now, the question becomes, how did this happen? And here's where the evolutionary history gets truly bizarre, because spiders evolved from mollusks. Specifically, they're descended from ancient sea creatures that were basically snails. Think about that transition, from slow, armored, passive filter feeders to fast, soft-bodied, active predators with advanced sensing systems and sophisticated behaviors. That's not incremental evolution. That's radical transformation. And it happened because of one evolutionary decision that seemed terrible at the time. Spiders' ancestors lost their shells. Shells provide protection, defense, structure. Most mollusks kept their shells and diversified into thousands of species of clams and snails. They're successful, but they're limited. They're slow. They're vulnerable when the shell breaks. They can't squeeze into tight spaces. When the lineage that would become spiders lost their shells about 400 million years ago, they became completely soft-bodied. No protection, no armor, no rigid structure. This should have been evolutionary suicide. But it wasn't. Because without shells, these proto-spiders could do things their armored cousins couldn't. They could move faster. They could fit through cracks. They could inhabit three-dimensional spaces instead of being limited to surfaces. They could develop flexible bodies with this nearly infinite degrees of freedom. But being soft and unprotected created intense selection pressure. The slow ones got eaten. The stupid ones got eaten. The ones with poor sensory systems got eaten. Only the fast, clever, well-sensed individuals survived. And over millions of generations, this pressure sculpted spiders into what they are now. So here's the lesson. Sometimes the worst evolutionary decision in the short term creates opportunities in the long term. Losing shells made spiders vulnerable. But vulnerability drove innovation. It forced them to develop silk for protection. It forced them to evolve better senses to detect threats. It forced them to become smarter to compensate for lack of physical defense. Spiders are successful, not despite losing their shells, but because they lost their shells. The constraint created the solution. Let me tell you about spider behaviors that still make no sense to me. Bolus spiders don't use webs. They produce a single thread with a sticky ball. Then they release pheromones mimicking female moths. Male moths, detecting a potential mate, fly toward the spider. The spider swings the bolas like a lasso, hitting the moth mid-flight. This is chemical deception combined with ballistic weapon deployment. Net casting spiders weave small rectangular webs, hold them between their legs, and hang upside down. When prey approaches, they throw the net. They're using webs as handheld tools, and diving bell spiders live completely underwater. They build silk structures, fill them with air bubbles from the surface, and live inside these submerged chambers. Artificial diving bells made of silk. Each behavior represents a radical departure from typical spider ecology. And they evolved independently. multiple times. We need to talk about venom. Spider venom didn't evolve to kill. It evolved for digestion. Early spiders had digestive enzymes in their guts. At some point, those enzymes started being produced near the mouth. When injected into prey, they began breaking down tissue externally, external digestion. The prey becomes food before it's consumed. Then something unexpected happened. Some enzymes mutated and became neurotoxins. They stopped just dissolving tissue and started disrupting neural signals. Prey became paralyzed, so venom evolved twice, first as digestion, then as neurotoxin, and it evolved independently in multiple families, each producing different chemical cocktails. Black widow venom causes massive neurotransmitter release. Brazilian wandering spider venom affects ion channels. Sydney funnel web venom produces one of the most potent neurotoxins known. But none of this is designed for humans. We're not prey or predators. We're just accidentally vulnerable to compounds optimized for insects. And most spider venom is highly specific. It works on certain nervous systems, but not others. This specificity comes from millions of years of coevolution. But here's the bizarre part. Some spiders are evolving to reduce venom potency. In urban environments with abundant prey and few predators, maintaining powerful venom is metabolically expensive. Some populations show measurable decreases in venom's toxicity within decades. Evolution in real time. Despite everything we've learned, fundamental questions remain. Do spiders feel pain? They have nociceptors. They learn from negative experiences. They avoid harmful stimuli. But is there subjective suffering or just mechanical response? We can't know. Do spiders sleep? Some show periods of inactivity resembling sleep. Some exhibit behavior changes possibly analogous to REM. But we don't know if they're actually sleeping. Can they recognize individuals? Some evidence suggests yes. Certain species treat familiar spiders differently. But whether this is true recognition or chemical cue response is unclear. What's the upper limit of spider cognition? We've documented planning, tool use, learning, memory. But how far does it go? We don't know. And here's what fascinates me most. If spiders had longer lifespans, would they develop culture? Most live 1 to 2 years. What if they lived 50 years? 100? Would they accumulate knowledge approaching culture? We'll never know. But the fact the question is worth asking tells us something profound. Here's what keeps me up at night. Spiders have survived 5 mass extinctions, 5 separate events that killed off most life on Earth. The extinction that killed the dinosaurs, spiders survived. The Permian extinction that killed 90% of all species, spiders survived. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, dramatic climate shifts. As spiders survived all of it. And they didn't just survive, they thrived. Today, spiders are one of the most diverse and successful predator groups on Earth. Over 50,000 documented species. Every terrestrial ecosystem, every climate zone, from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests to deserts to your basement. They succeeded because they're generalists that perfected specialization. The fundamental spider body plan works in any environment. 8 legs, silk production, hydraulic movement, distributed sensing, chemical weapons. These core features adapt to any situation. But individual species are specialists. Jumping spiders for active hunting, orb weavers for aerial prey capture, wolf spiders for ground pursuit, trapdoor spiders for ambush predation. Each species optimized for specific niches while maintaining the core adaptability of the spider design. This is the secret to evolutionary success. Be flexible enough to survive anything. Be specialized enough to dominate something. Spiders do both, and they're still evolving. Right now, urban spiders are adapting to cities. Some build webs near artificial lights to capture concentrated prey. Others shifted to nocturnal patterns to avoid human activity. Some species are evolving reduced venom because city life is easier. Evolution doesn't stop. It's happening continuously. And spiders are responding to human-created environments faster than we can document the changes. We started with a question: how are spiders even possible? Their bodies use vulnerable hydraulic systems. They produce materials we can't replicate. They sense the world in ways we barely understand. They display intelligence that shouldn't fit in their microscopic brains. And their evolutionary history is a series of risky decisions that should have failed, but they didn't fail. Spiders succeeded beyond almost any other animal group, and they did it by breaking rules, by losing their shells and becoming vulnerable, by evolving distributed intelligence instead of centralized brains, by manufacturing advanced materials at room temperature, by sensing electric fields with hair. Every time I learn something new about spiders, I'm reminded that evolution doesn't follow our assumptions. It doesn't care about engineering principles or common sense. It cares about what works. And sometimes what works is completely bizarre. Spiders shouldn't exist. Their biology is a series of improbabilities stacked on impossibilities. But here they are, in your house, in your garden, everywhere, thriving on solutions that make no sense until you realize they work perfectly. If this journey into biological impossibility changed how you see the creatures you've been squashing in your bathroom, subscribe and join us as we explore more animals that prove evolution is stranger and more creative than we ever imagined. Nature doesn't play by rules, it plays to win. And sometimes winning looks really, really weird.